Seiko released the new Seiko 5 Sports SSK GMT back in June of this year for the attractive price of $475. It looks a lot like everyone's favorite once affordable diver, the discontinued Seiko SKX 007, but with a GMT function. It seemed like every Seiko fan was waiting for a watch like this. I spent a week on the wrist with it, just hanging around my town, and I have some thoughts. I've never owned a Seiko SKX 007. Back in 2017, when I was first getting into the world of mechanical watches, everyone seemed to recommend this budget-friendly dive watch, but I chose a dressier Seiko 5 SNK 795 instead. At the time, I worked in an office and wasn't a scuba diver, so the Seiko 5 paired with a nice leather strap made a lot more sense for me. That watch was also only $70 after tax, which was an amazing deal. Fast forward to today, and I no longer work in an office. I still don't dive, but I do live a semi-active lifestyle, and I travel quite a bit for work and leisure. My old Seiko 5 just doesn't cut it anymore. I'd prefer something with the sturdiness of a diver, like the discontinued SKX, and the ability to track 2 time zones, all at a reasonable price point. There's the Seiko 5 Sports SRPD that launched back in 2019, which kinda replaced the SKX line, but it lacks a GMT function. That's where the SSK line comes in. It comes in a trio of color options. The SSK 005 is orange, the SSK 003 is blue, and the SSK 001 is black, and it's the one that I got to spend the week with. They're all 42.5 millimeters in diameter, 13.6 millimeters thick, and around 46 millimeters lug to lug, which is very similar in size to the original SKX 007. The dimensions coupled with the Jubilee style bracelet made it extremely easy to wear on my 7.25 inch wrist. Yeah, the bracelet is a little jangly, but as long as it's comfortable, it doesn't bother me one bit. I think it even looked great on smaller wrists because of that reasonable 46mm lug-to-lug distance. Looks-wise, I think it's a very attractive functional design. I mean, it's inspired by the SKX, which was the epitome of reasonably priced functional design, in my opinion, of course. On the dial, the hands are similar to the SKX, but it's a GMT, so there's obviously an extra hand. That hand is big and red and contrasts the matte black dial nicely. Also, the indices are no longer printed, they're applied. It makes the watch look a little more upscale, but a little less sporty. I prefer printed since it's a sportier watch, but the SSKs doesn't bother me that much. One minor thing I'm not a huge fan of is the Seiko 5 logo printed under the word Seiko. It's on all the new Seiko 5s and it's a little cartoony to me, but it's rather small and it's far from a deal breaker. I just prefer the logo on the previous Seiko 5. Another thing that I'm not really into is the rotating friction bezel. I know this watch is offered at a great price point, especially for a GMT, but I'm so used to clicky bezels that it just didn't feel right to me. I'm sure with time I'd get used to it, but a week just wasn't enough for me. Besides that, the bezel looks awesome. It's easy to grip and has a hardlex glass bezel insert, which really makes the bezel pop more than a more commonly used aluminum or even ceramic bezel. It's also bicolored. The top half is black and the bottom is grayish or almost mirror-like depending on how the light hits it. I really like it. The dial is also protected by a hardlex crystal and features a Cyclops lens over the date. Those are always a point of contention, but I dig it because it helps me view the date window easier. It's useful. Inside the watch is Seiko's in-house caliber 4R34 movement. It's automatic with a GMT function and has a 41-hour power reserve, which is fine for the price, and it hacks, which is great for the price. Sure, these aren't the most accurate movements, but it's always useful if you like setting your watch to a reference time. It's rated at +45, -35 seconds per day, but this one was much more accurate during my week with it. I'm talking only a few seconds fast per day, which was a welcome surprise. The one slight drawback for me is that this has a collar style GMT function. Pulling the crown out to the first position allows you to jump the GMT hand forward in 1 hour increments. This is great if you like to keep track of another time zone, but isn't as useful as a local GMT, which lets you change the hour hand independently to your local time zone without affecting any of the other hands. It's an extremely useful feature if you travel a lot. However, with these complaints, I have to remember that this watch is reasonably priced at $475. There aren't many great GMTs at this price point, so even though it's not my preferred GMT function, I definitely respect it. One thing that might be hard for some to accept is that the crown is non-screw down. The watch still offers 100 meters of water resistance, but for some, not having a screw down crown scares them from even taking a dip in the pool. This isn't my watch, so I did not test water resistance, but if I owned one, I would not hesitate to wear one for a swim. I think the water resistance rating and crown are enough for like 98% of the people that own the SKX diver and want that same style, but with GMT functionality. If you plan to scuba dive with your watch, you should look elsewhere, like a dive watch. I mean, the SSK's bezel is missing a loomed pip, and it's not a dive bezel, it's a GMT bezel. So I know I had a few minor complaints, more than you're probably used to hearing from me about a watch, but when you take price into consideration, this watch offers really great value. The SKX was an icon for many, and the Seiko 5 Sports SSK is all that, plus hacking, and a GMT function, minus a little bit of water resistance. I have no doubt Seiko will have zero issues selling these watches, but for my lifestyle, I just prefer something with a local jumping GMT. You might not think that's necessary, and to you, my friend, I highly recommend this watch.